When I was in high school, I was best friends with that kid, the kid nobody else would be friends with. We had a history, and I suppose I took pity on him for having such a rough time at school, so I took him under my wing, so to speak. He was very emotionally troubled, depressed, sometimes suicidal. We would get very easily he would get very easily worked up and argumentative. My friendship helped him through all that. It was myself, him, and our mutual friend who is now one of my best friends. He's the only one I can really talk to about our experience. We had a we had a bit of a rocky relationship here and there. Eventually, I figured out that he was a compulsive liar, building himself up to make him seem more unique or likable, just so he could fit in. I could seriously write a book about with the shit he would say or do. I called him out on it, and he was really upset, but he said he'd stop. He never did. His lies became less exaggerating, but they were still lies. He started talking to me and insulting my intelligence because he was so sure that he was smarter than everyone. He also tried to be very manipulative, which is my naive teen years I never put together. His family moved across the country after we graduated. I can't really say I missed him terribly, but our relationship it was strained largely due to an accident in which I was manipulated to betray the girl I loved at the time, thinking he was a relationship expert. I don't know why I just ended it with him right there. The next summer he came to visit for a week, and then it was worse than we could have imagined. It was almost unbearable. He was driving us crazy the entire time. When he left, it was such a breath of fresh air. That was 3 years ago. I slowly began to distance myself from him more and more, ignoring his calls and messages, making it abundantly clear that we were done. In hindsight, this wasn't the best way to deal with all this. I could have at least given him the courtesy of closure. Part of me just wanted to blank out of that particular part of my life and never remember it again. Fast forward to last summer. I'm on vacation with my family and my girlfriend. The night before I head back home, I have a dream with this guy in it. I'm at a concert enjoying myself. When I see him in the crowd, I immediately think, shit, I gotta get out of here. He starts running after me, but I manage to shake him off and get back to my car where I find him waiting for me. He asks what's been going on with me ignoring him, and we hit the road. I basically tell him straight faced that we know that everything he's done is a lie, and brought up specific stories in which we knew he was either wrong or lying. He looks like he's going to puke on the verge of tears. Still in the dream, we arrive at my house and sit in the car silently. Choked, he asks, well, can I at least crash at your place tonight? And I think about it. I close my eyes, and suddenly I'm overcome with about sleep paralysis, which I suffer from frequently. The dream is over, and I wake up sweating. The next day, my girlfriend and I are driving back home when I get a call from one of my friends asking if I had heard anything regarding that kid. I was perplexed, so I called my best friend and immediately looked into it. He died that night, likely within a few hours of the dream, overdosed on meds and died in the hospital. No note, no nothing. I'm hearing this as I'm stuck in traffic and I had no idea what to do. I told my girlfriend about the dream I had and she was spooked. I have no idea how to grieve this guy. My friends and family smothered me with their sympathies, and all I wanted to do was hang out with our best friend and just come to terms with it. I told him about the dream and he didn't know what to make of it. I still have dreams with him and it to this day. It ranged from us hanging out and being all buddy again to me talking with him about where his life went. Eventually, I work out it's just a dream and look at him and say, you died, and the dream ends. It was a Wednesday night At my college, and some friends were bored, so we decided to take a trip from our school to Foxwoods Casino in CT. If you've ever been there, you'll know that Foxwoods is on an Indian reservation and what can accurately be described as the middle of nowhere. There is absolutely nothing around besides the casino and some old houses. We got to the casino around 10 p.m., 3 girls, 2 guys, and played some blackjack. Around 2 a.m., we called it quits and decided to head back to campus, which was about a 2 hour drive. The fog was really bad that night. New England fog is the worst. Then it starts to rain, and driving in that thing was no fun. I'm driving, my boy's in the passenger seat, and the 3 girls are in the back. The girls, being girls, start to comment on how dark and dreary it was outside. Also, they start to play up the Native American spiritual aspect of where we were, getting themselves all worked up. Me and my boy in the front thought it was funny, more concerned with how we were going to spend the money we just won in blackjack. My old GPS usually said to get on a main road, and Masjid Al-Khatiti means a road with some buildings near it. Right away, but I was using a new one and it said to take a different route. I was curious if there was a faster way back to the main highway, so I followed the new path. As I was making a left turn, the girls all screamed at once. I wonder what's up. And I noticed what we're turning into. Even for nowhere Hearsville, this road was scary. There were no houses, just woods on either side, and although the road was paved, it was not well developed. Still, my GPS said we were on it for 1 mile before we had to get on the highway, so I told the girls to relax. I thought it was tough to see through the rain and fog, so I had to go slowly. This wasn't fun. I noticed that there was a creepy pond to our right, and we could hear noises in the woods around us. My boy told them it was just some Connecticut deer, but they were starting to actually get freaked out and not just playing around. And so did I. I realized that if my car were ever gonna break down in this scary of a place, I was gonna shit myself. But my GPS said zero point 0.2 miles, and we were out of there. And that's when the girl screamed again. I looked up, all of a sudden, the road ended, and woods began. This wasn't some construction, the road just came to an end. The trees and such started, and there was nowhere else to go but back. At this point, I got real frightened. There were no houses or light posts around, just blackness besides my headlights. Now I needed to make a complete 180 turn around and go all the way back. I turned my head and around to look through my back windshield to make sure I wasn't hitting anyone or anything, and I saw the girls' faces start to quiver. I knew they were ready to scream again, but I didn't know what about. I turned around. At the end of the road, staring back at us was a dog, a skinny brown colored dog of a decent overall size. It was sitting right in front of us, no more than 10 feet away, and although the fog and rain were bad, we could see it clearly with my headlights on. And then I noticed it moving, but not towards us. It hopped on its back legs and stood upright in a very human-esque way. At this point, everyone was silent, and I knew I couldn't get in reverse because there was a pond just behind us, and I didn't want to drive into it. I thought about just running it over. I love animals, trust me, but if you were ever in this situation, you'd think about it too. But the dog wouldn't get back down on all fours. Instead, it continued just to stare, a blank, dark stare right at us. I saw as it moved its front paws toward each other. Slowly, it began to clap. Swear to God, it just stood there and clapped slowly, staring at us, silent. Finally, to cap off the creepiness, it sported a deranged smile, as if this was the end for us in one more than one way. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned my head around, put the car in reverse, and did a 180 and sped my way as fast as I could until we hit Main Road. The ride all the way back to school was nerve-wracking. I never felt so relieved to get back at my dorm. I'll never go back to Foxwoods again. I don't ever want to go near that road. Never again. I grew up a small town girl in Washington State. Our house was a three-story farmhouse in the middle of the forest. Tall evergreen trees surrounded the cedar side at home, with this tiny dandelion-filled yard, and it was a drive of a half a mile to get to our mailbox and the nearest paved road. Being Washington, the sky was often cloudy. It often rained. Starting in elementary school, I was allowed to stay home alone. I had multiple younger siblings who spent the evenings in daycare. It was a good way for my parents to save money. I was pretty lonely, but learned to like being alone. I loved to read, and we had satellite TV. By third grade, I'd brute forced the passcode to the satellite and enjoyed movies like this. I devoured documentaries on the paranormal, learning everything I could. I discovered the fact that poltergeists centered themselves around households with emotionally unbalanced adolescents, and every unexplained happening or bump in the night was suddenly explained. Several times, single plates had shattered while safety shut away in the cupboard. Footsteps happened in the night. Lights flashed out in the trees. Every afternoon, I would be dropped off by the school bus to walk the half-mile home alone. After I scared myself shitless with scary movies, I had a dinner of Pop-Tarts, watched the sunset, spent the evening listening to the house creak, tried to breathe quickly or quietly, and jumped at every tiny noise until my parents came home. It got early out there in the woods and dark. One evening, I found myself more scared than usual and had to go through the house turning on every light I could find. The TV was on, the volume was turned low, its light reflecting into the room to further banish the shadows. Our farmhouse had a deep covered wraparound deck. It hugged the house from three sides, and the front and back steps were gated to keep the wildlife away. I heard a thump as my cat jumped down onto the porch from the railing. He was too fat to fit through the gaps around the gate. I leaned over into the overstuffed chair to look outside and check to see if the feline needed me to go get him inside. The tall glass outdoors contained two large windows, and two pans of solid blackness stared back. I realized that I neglected to turn on the porch lights. I'd also forgotten to close the curtains. Digging my elbow into the wide arm of the chair, I spun back around toward the TV and sank deeper into the chair, the wings of it surrounding me, the high back helping me to feel protected. The curtains were wide open on the window beside the television, and the whole room was reflected back at me in its shiny black maw. I swallowed. The bright interior of the house, so comforting a moment before, suddenly felt harsh and sharp. The illumination turned every window into a mirror. I was blind to the inky outside world. Mom and Dad would be home soon. It would be okay. I breathed slowly and flipped aimlessly through the channels, trying to occupy my young, scared mind. The rafters creaked. I squeaked. My cat jumped onto the ottoman and stared at me. My cat. I slowly, reluctantly came to the realization as I stared into the feline's blinking yellow eyes. If he's in here, then what's under the thump? Louder than the first, diverted my cat's attention to the back door. He leaned to the side on the ottoman, craning his neck to peek around me to see what was at the glass doors. The doorknob rattled. I froze. The lock wiggled gently at first, then a little more forcefully. It was locked. My cat trembled a little as he stared. My body was like marble. All I could do was gaze into those yellow eyes, desperate for some sort of reflection, a clue as to what was rattling my back door. Rattle, rattle, thump, thump, thump. The door began to shake in its door frame, forward, back, slam, slam, slam. The weather stripping, swishing against the door as an inhuman force pushed the locks to what must be their breaking point, a final thump. Then silence. I felt a scream bubbling at my throat and clapped my hands across my mouth, afraid to draw the entity's attention to me. I'm sorry, I thought, in my head like a mantra, trying to calm my brain and allow the creature to go away. Through the thumping of my heartbeat, I slowly began to discern the footsteps. Thump, thump, thump. I don't believe, I don't believe, I don't believe. Heavy footsteps circled the deck, coming to stop in front of the wide window in front of me. I trained my wide, fright-filled eyes on the television. The flickering images failing to register in my mind, I tried to pretend the thing away. Not a single shadow was visible in the brightly lit window, nothing to give away the shape of the creature outside. Minutes passed, maybe hours. The crackle of gravel on the driveway eventually broke the silence, and the headlights of my parents' car lit up in the front window. It was empty. I was alone.